Hello and welcome back to Underlab. Frisk is the main character of Undertale, a child with a constantly neutral expression who can either go about saving all of monster kind, or quite literally killing them all. One way or another though, without them the fate of monsters is undecided. After all, whenever we die, Asgore says that the fate of humans and monsters depends on us. Now this is probably referring to Chara, or Kara, but really it's just as dependent on Frisk. The true pacifist ending could have never happened the way it did without them. So what exactly would have happened if Frisk never existed? It's time to find out. Before I begin, I'd just like to quickly say that King Mel is still making musical commissions. He's a very talented composer who makes wonderful music for an extremely low price, and I find it pretty depressing that he doesn't receive more attention. Be sure to follow the link in the description to his channel if you need music for any reason. Also, congratulations to Kay Jensen for winning the third Head Scientist poll. I'm beginning to notice a trend here. Sometime in the year 20XX, a child tumbled down a hole within Mount Ebott. This child was Frisk, and on the true pacifist path their actions eventually lead to all monster kind going free. It was through their determination and goodwill that the monsters were reminded that not all humans are evil, and that the barrier was eventually shattered. So just imagine how radically different things would be if they never existed. At first glance, it seems like things would take a tremendous turn for the worse. With no Frisk, Tori would have never seen it fit to leave the ruins, and would continue to live as an isolated hermit. Sans would never make a new friend, and his nihilism would likely only get worse. Papyrus would never see his first human, and would likely never achieve his ambition of joining the Royal Guard. Speaking of the Royal Guard, Undyne would likely remain relentless, but should surely tire herself out eventually with nothing to actually hunt for. Alphys would likely never overcome her anxieties about the world outside her laboratory, and the horrors of what she did in the true laboratory would continue to haunt her until she couldn't take it anymore. Metaton would never realise how much his fans love him, and therefore he'd continue his narcissistic pursuit of becoming a star to everyone on planet Earth. Asgore meanwhile would likely be utterly devastated, as his plan to break the barrier would have surely been entirely in vain, meaning he took 6 innocent lives for no reason. It'd surely be too much of a burden to bear. Flowey meanwhile would likely go back to tormenting people with nothing better to do. The spiteful little weed isn't going away anytime soon, and he'd likely bide his time in the hopes of a 7th human eventually turning up one day. Well, it certainly seems like a good thing that Frisk existed, but hold on a second. Are monsters really that lacking in determination? Okay, so perhaps physically they are, but we've seen time and time again that monsters can prove themselves with just a little effort. Undyne, for example, never gives up on her purpose to protect her fellow monsters, and she even refuses to die on the neutral and genocide routes. Can we really believe that Undyne would ever give up on her quest to see Asgore's vision fulfilled? I've very little doubt that should a 7th human fall underground who wasn't Frisk, that she wouldn't hunt them down without pause. Assuming this human doesn't have quite as much determination as the iconic protagonist of Undertale, Undyne would likely eventually capture her prey. With Asgore's dark but necessary ambition complete, the monsters could surely access the surface once again. While this sounds great, it really isn't. Remember that they only become peaceful because Frisk placated them. In this alternate timeline where there never was a Frisk, the monsters might go toward humanity the moment they escape. It wouldn't be nearly as one-sided as it was last time either. Monsters become incredibly powerful by absorbing human souls, and remember that Asgore would have had to absorb the 7 souls he collected in order to break the barrier. In other words, he'd be like a god, and surely more than powerful enough to kill a few humans. He could then take their souls as well, before slowly taking complete control of the planet. While I do doubt this would be his goal, it may very well come to that if the humans ever attacked monster kind again. This time the war would be a lot less unfair, and could very well end up the other way around, with humanity being defeated. With the provocation of more warlike monsters such as Undyne, and the general approval Asgore received when he declared war on humanity, it seems like history would be destined to repeat itself. This time though, the humans may very well end up as the ones sealed underground. Of course, this is just one possibility of many. Would the monsters necessarily come to a violent conclusion? We know that they are naturally more inclined towards pacifism and empathy, so perhaps they'd be able to find another way out of the underground entirely. But how would that be possible without 7 human souls? Well, Alphys was conducting research into the true nature of souls until everything went horribly wrong thanks to the emergence of the amalgamates. She never intended to create them, but thanks to the byproducts of an experiment went wrong. Her efforts were set back who knows how long. Having been essentially traumatized by her failure, Alphys gave up on the projects entirely. But what if she was able to find the courage to return to her work? Her efforts weren't a complete failure. While the monsters did become horrific amalgamates, without Alphys they would have simply died. Perhaps there's potential in her research after all. In one case she had tremendous success. Alphys is the accidental creator of Flowey. When she injected the golden flower that bloomed where Azrael died with determination, it came to life after a period of waiting. Infused with Azrael's Azriel's essence, the flower essentially became Azriel without a soul. What would have happened if she had chosen an inanimate object that didn't have a monster's dust spread upon it? Also, what if either Toriel or Asgore were willing to subject themselves to experimentation? Boss souls are the only type of monster soul that can persist after death, so surely if they were combined with a sprinkling of determination, they may very well find a way of getting past the barrier peacefully. While this is all entirely speculation, it doesn't seem too impossible. We have to remember that Alphys does seem to have a lot of good ideas. It's just that she's been left an emotional wreck after her one tremendous error. Perhaps with the assistance of positive individuals such as Undyne and Papyrus, Alphys could overcome her own fears without the help of any human like Frisk. We never get to know if this is true, unfortunately, because we arrive before she can come to that conclusion herself, therefore drastically altering the story, no matter what we do. Perhaps there's another way that things could go though. What if the monsters ended up never leaving the underground? For what's supposed to be a cave, it seems like a very diverse place. There's snow, plants, water and heat, not to mention that the monsters seem to have carved a home out of the stone itself. While they would surely be better off on the surface, it's never implied that there's any urgency to escape the underground. If there is a potential way of getting out without taking another innocent life, then they have all the time in the world to discover it. If they never did though, there's nothing preventing things from slowly piecing back together over time. If Toriel ever found it within her heart to forgive Asgore, then that would surely restore morale across the kingdom. From there on out, who knows what could happen? Perhaps the pair would have another child. While Azriel's loss resulted in great depression amongst monster kind, surely another dreamer might fill that void. With peace restored, there'd be less calling for the heads of humans, and maybe the monsters could settle down to a more permanent life underground. Many of them do seem restless though, and chances are the desire to escape would soon resurface once more. There is one possibility, however, that could completely change things. Remember that on the true pacifist route, we're not the ones to ultimately shatter the barrier. That honour goes to Azriel, otherwise known as Flowey the Flower. Because of his evil plan, he inadvertently ended up breaking the barrier, therefore allowing for Frisk and everyone else to go free. In the end, our human soul was never required, and the 6 Asgore had already collected ended up being enough. Flowey was never able to get to the souls within their containers, while Asgore held them before you showed up. Still, who says there won't ever be an opportunity where Flowey could somehow lead all the monsters to new home, before somehow getting his leaves on the 6 human souls. Things from here on out would get pretty crazy. Who knows for certain that Azriel would end up having his epiphany and end up freeing the souls like he does when Frisk confronts him. There's a chance he wouldn't, as it's only by saving the lost souls that he seems to remember who he really is. What was Azriel's goal anyhow? He seems very conflicted. Apparently he just wants to reset everything, but to what point in time? What if he went so far back that he became a living child once more? This fascinating possibility means that he could very well end up rewinding time to a point before his own death, and if that were true, maybe he could completely alter his actions having seen the grim future that awaits him. This would surely be one of the biggest twists within Undertale's story, as Azriel could then guide the monsters with his knowledge of the future, and certainly find a way of eventually freeing them. He'd be his normal self again surely, and so he wouldn't go about tormenting them. This way Azriel would be alive again, and the monsters would be filled with hope. Crazily enough, if this is really what Azriel wanted, then it may even be a better ending than what we receive on the true pacifist route. Maybe Frisk should have just stayed at home, and let things play out by themselves. There's plenty of things that could have happened if Frisk never existed. It's pretty strange to think that for all of the best resolutions, the human never really had to be involved in anything. Still, who knows for certain that Azriel wouldn't just abuse his powers to torture the souls he harvested for all eternity. It's probably best that things ended up happening how they did, but it's fun to speculate. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't stop existing for whatever reason, and I'll see you next time. Before I go, I'd just like to say a massive thank you to my patrons. My head scientists Asgore and She, Cameron Vigil, Kay Jensen and Sophronius, and my Underlab scientists Crystal Slate, Nicholas Dux, Armin Arlett, Marisa Ray, Corey Kidwell, Yushio Coroni, Sarah Wydra and Emily Gatewood. Thanks to the generosity of every name you see here, this channel is able to keep going. If you enjoyed this video, please consider checking out the Patreon link below, as well as the video that explains why I'd so massively appreciate your contribution.